Hello, everyone. X-Wall, Kill Beth, Light, and Serenity here. Been a while since we've done a video, but I was talking to my older sister, and she has the opinion that being raised a Jehovah's Witness could be a good thing because of sheltering. And the concept is that sheltering keeps you away from negative things. You don't get into bad activities if you're sheltered. Now, I have a different opinion. I'm going to break down my opinion. Serenity is about to make sure the one puppy doesn't eat the other puppy's dog food. But Serenity can break down her viewpoint on it. Now, both parents that I was raised with were Jehovah's Witnesses. My father wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, but I lived with my stepdad, and he was, and so was my mother. So I can attest to what it is, being sheltered. Serenity, I think your parents were both Jehovah's Witnesses, and she had some pretty good thoughts about it, and I'm about to let her go ahead and give your view on it.
So, I think I had said before, it depends on what definition being sheltered is for each person. But for me, I guess, for a witness, sheltered would be basically keeping, your child away from anything that you deem worldly. So, yeah, that's what I would consider it. And the thing with me is, it is true that some parents did that, but usually it ended up backfiring because kids were so, I want to say, ignorant of certain aspects of society that once they got out into society, things happened because they were not educated. And the big one is being taught about just sexuality, reproduction, contraception, that type of thing. Now, if you were in the public school system, obviously at a certain point, I believe it was 6th or 7th grade maybe, yep, you got sex ed class. And that was basically how you found out about certain things, especially contraception, STDs, things like that. So for ones that were homeschooled, which I knew a lot of witness children that were homeschooled because that was part of, I don't like to say the culture, but it was the parents' way of controlling what their kids were taught and what they knew. So the ones that were homeschooled, a lot of times once they were, let's say, outside the parents' influence and maybe got their own job that was in the quote-unquote world, these are the ones that would come up pregnant because they really had no concept of different things that goes along with living a normal life in what most people do in society. So, in a way, that's what I think about when I talk about being sheltered, is you don't really understand the full scope of everyday life because you live in a bubble, especially the ones that were homeschooled. Mm-hmm. Because they were not exposed to a lot of things. And even the socialization, they were groups for other homeschoolers that had similar belief systems. Mm-hmm. So it might not always have been other witnesses in the homeschooling group. It might have been other very religious, strict upbringing. And those are the type that would get together. So yeah, that's kind of my thing of being sheltered. For me, my parents tried to shelter me, but I had cousins and other relatives that were not witnesses whatsoever. So we were exposed to that.
That's what I'm saying. So,
but there are some parents that if you have cousins or aunts, uncles that are, quote unquote worldly, mm-hmm, they don't want you around them. They shelter you from even that. So yeah, you really don't have that exposure. But for me, especially on my father's side, mm-hmm, there were relatives and cousins and whatnot that were not Jehovah's Witnesses, and they did their own thing. So, yeah.
So basically, I don't think that sheltering is a good thing. I don't think keeping a person away from certain aspects of life is a good thing. Because the concept is, well, you're not going to get pregnant if we keep you away from boys.
Right.
Period. At all.
And we're not even going to teach you about, what happens, contraception or whatever, because that's not even something we want to teach you.
We don't want you to know about it.
Right. No, it's just like if we teach you that, you might think somehow that we're okaying it.
Yeah.
And that's not even on our level, because you're not going to have sex without being married, so we don't even need to cover that. That's what I'm thinking. They're rationalizing parents in their heads.
Usually the sheltering doesn't work, and I'll tell you the reason why is because you can't continuously shelter a person from life. You can't do it. Now, if you are Amish, I don't know, because they have their own communities.
Exactly.
They're off by themselves. You cannot shelter a person when you're sending them off to public school. You're not around them all the time. Usually what I saw growing up was other Jehovah's Witnesses that went to my school, and they oftentimes were the ones getting into the most trouble. Why? They had no reference point of what was normal and what was not normal. How do we know what's normal and what's not normal if we're not allowed to experience life to a certain extent? We're sheltered from it. So eventually you end up in situations that everybody else in the school was in the same situations, but you as a Jehovah's Witness, you don't know how to handle it. And growing up, my older sister had her father who was a Jehovah's Witness, but she had her mother who was not. And of course, she can tell it to you better than I could. But in my opinion, that's a better experience, not being completely sheltered as a Jehovah's Witness. You got one parent in, one parent out. It's better than what I grew up around, where my stepdad was in it and my mother was in it. My father was not in it, but he wasn't really trying to be too influential in it. He's going to let it ride, let it do what it do. Dog's about to knock everything over.
He doesn't understand the cord concept.
No, he don't understand the core concept. But for me, my parents tried to shelter us. Now, I'll tell you what happened. Life happened. My parents ended up getting a divorce. My stepdad went to a whole nother house somewhere else. We no longer had two parents in the house to be able to watch us. And we've been sheltered all this time. We haven't been taught how to deal with the opposite sex. We haven't been taught how to deal with emotions that you have when your parents go through a divorce. We weren't taught any of this. And the concept is your life is going to happen the way it is in the Watchtower. It didn't. It did not happen that way. So my parents got a divorce. We had boys sneaking into the house. Not we. I didn't have no boys sneaking in no house. My sister, not Andrea, not my older sister, not the one you all know. My younger sister had boys sneaking in the house. I kid you not. I'm sitting on the floor, laying on the floor. We had couches, but my whole thing was laying on the floor watching TV. I'm watching TV. The TV's by the window. I would see legs dangling out from the window. Legs dangling as they scoot and scoot and scoot. And they finally get to the point where they can jump down. Boys were sneaking in. Why? I don't think my sister knew how to deal with the opposite sex. So if
it's to the point where she felt she needed to sneak because she couldn't open up to her parents about,
That's my whole point.
So
that's my whole point. If she didn't have a reference point to what is and what is not normal. So you're left at the mercy of the situation. And apparently these boys convinced her to be able to sneak in her room. Now, this is a part of the negative aspect of being sheltered. Apparently she didn't know that this is not going to lead to anything good. And boys were sneaking in the room. I remember there were guys that were angry about certain things, banging on our front door. Of course, I'm there, so that stuff is only going to go. But so far as the banging on the door or whatnot, my stepdad came over once, and there was a boy in my sister's room. He found out about it, kicked the boy out, then got ready to get on the phone to call my mother, because my stepdad would only come by to pick up the mail and then dip. Like, he ain't even really come to check on us. He just came to pick up his mail and dip. Found out it was a boy in my sister's room, kicked the boy out. I'm laying in the floor watching TV like I usually do, watching all this unfold. And my sister then slams the door. He gets on the phone to call my mom and let her know his boy's sneaking in her room somehow. They climbing on something. I've yet to figure out what the heck they climbed on. But yeah, if a guy finds a girl that's that naive that will just let him sneak into her room, he'll find something to climb on. And when he got on the phone to call my mom, back in the day, we didn't use cell phones. We used landlines. She picked up another phone in the house, which what that does is now both phones are off the hook and you can't dial out because you got both phones. And she's pushing buttons on one phone. He's, get off the phone. I'm calling your mother. No, no. Like, this is the stuff that was going on. There was no reference point. How else do we know how to deal with the divorce? You're mad at your dad. This is my stepdad, you're mad at your dad. You're lashing out. You have no reference point of what is a normal way to lash out and communicate that you're angry. You don't have a normal way of communicating with the opposite sex and knowing what you should and should not have as far as boundaries. There should be some boundaries. Them boys shouldn't be climbing all on our roof. I shouldn't go outside, look at the house, and there's 5 boys on the roof all trying to figure out how to get in the room with my sister. You know, there's got to be some sort of normality.
Come on,
we had.
Don't be playing.
No.
That's just wrong. Don't be doing that to your sister.
There wasn't 5 at the same time, but there were more. It wasn't just one guy coming over.
Okay, they're rotating, but still, don't be having like 5. People will get an image out there.
And there wasn't 5 boys on the roof.
I don't want that image about your sister
lined up on the roof to get her. No, that wasn't.
I don't want that type.
There wasn't 5, but there were boys on the daggum roof getting in. Now, typically, I would only see one jumping down at a time. But the point is there was no reference point of normal communication, normal, how do I deal with this, normal, how do I deal with boys that are all trying to come into my room? How do I deal with this? You freaking watchtowers. There ain't no watchtower on that. And with me,
well, the guideline is don't
talk to them at all
or whatever.
Yeah, but how do you deal with the opposite sex when they're coming on to you? There's social pressure. Everybody else has got boyfriends, and your parents got a divorce, and you ain't got nobody giving you any kind of guidance at that point. That's not in the watchtower. Well, when your parents get divorced and there ain't nobody telling you, and you're left in the house by yourself. You know what I mean?
In general, because even if there was no divorce and kids are alone at home and have no clue, and you got, boys or girls from the neighborhood putting the pressure on and whatnot, and they don't have a clue,
Basically, we got thrust into life very quickly. Now, that's my sister's, I tell my own stuff too. So for me, this wasn't in the watchtower. Somebody broke in my car. My car was parked outside. Somebody broke that little window in the back to reach in and unlock it. I heard it because when they shattered the glass, it was loud as all get out. Keep in mind, we were raised Jehovah's Witnesses, but we weren't taking it super serious at that point. It's just the only thing we knew. And we were sheltered from everything, so we just didn't know anything else. I'm getting ready to run outside because somebody's actively breaking in my car, and I'm raised Jehovah's Witness. I'm sheltered. I don't see all the stuff about people getting shot because they're surprising burglars. So I'm getting ready to run outside. I cut on the lights. My parents cut on the rest of the lights, see what's going on, stop me from going outside because they're looking at me like that would be the dumbest thing you could possibly do at this point. The people who were breaking in my car saw all the lights on, took off running. I'm upset about the situation, and I don't have a way of dealing with it because it's not in a watchtower what to do when somebody breaks in your car. So what ended up happening is essentially we formed a gang, essentially. And I don't know if this is how gangs are formed, where something happens to someone and you're like, yeah, this is not happening again. We're going to make sure it don't happen. Well, here's what happens. Me and two of my friends get together and we're talking about it, and we're all Jehovah's Witnesses. Nobody has a reference point of normal how we deal with this. And my thing was lashing out. I'm going to lash out. We're going to do this to other people. This ain't going to happen to me. Let's see how other people feel about this. So we're going to break into other people's cars. I don't even know if Serene knows about this. But we essentially had a JW gang growing up. I was old enough to drive. I know I was that old because my sister was asking me, well, how old were you when you were breaking into cars and whatnot? I was old enough to drive. But being raised Jehovah's Witness, I didn't know how to be a car thief. You know what I mean? So I remember we broke into a car. We pulled on the handle and the freaking thing wasn't locked. Me and one of my friends, who was also Jehovah's Witness, pulled on the handle. It wasn't locked. We hop in the car. We about to hot wire this bad boy. We about to take off with this bad boy. Let's see how they feel. That was the theme. Let's see how they feel. Let's do to them what happened to us. And we were messing around with the car, and neither one of us could figure out how to hotwire a car. And this is broad daylight. That's what happens when Jehovah's Witnesses who are sheltered have their own gang. You're jumping into people's cars in broad daylight, and we're in there forever messing around with stuff like, I thought when you do this, it's supposed to come on. That's what happens on TV. Neither me or my friend could figure it out, and my friend was into tech stuff. So we're in the car forever in broad daylight. Eventually, we just get out of the car. Maybe somebody just didn't happen to be there that day. But that could have turned out pretty bad. What should have happened was somebody to call the cops. We'd have got arrested. And that'd have been the end of it. But there was a string of these events where we were doing this. And we were so idiotic. We would just go to cars and just pull on the handle. Pull on the handle. And I remember a bunch of people came outside and said, we sick of you car thieves. And that's when I realized, oh, we're pretty known in the freaking area for yanking on people's car doors, sitting in the car trying to figure out how to hotwire it. We could never figure it out, and then we just end up leaving. And my friends would try to recruit other Jehovah's Witnesses, other youth. This is what we do. Now, if you want to go run with us, you got to do this, you got to do that. You can't talk to people. I kid you not.
I know why you never told me this story.
I kid you. It just didn't come up. I kid you not. I was over at my friend's house. We were playing a game.
Because if you old enough to drive and doing this stuff, that...
I was over at a friend's house playing a game. And this other kid, I think his name was Aaron, came over. And I wouldn't tell him about all the stuff we do. But my other two friends was like, yeah, we about to roll out essentially. And if you want to come with us, then you're going to have to do this, that, and the other. And he's just kind of nervous. And he's looking like, well, man, I kind of want to see what it is you guys do. He's like, well, we do such and such, such. Because my friends thought it was the biggest thing in the world. I was just angry and didn't know how to communicate it. Because I had parents that were Jehovah's Witnesses for the most part. With my stepdad, it was a show. And with the show, to put on a show, you have to put on in front of other people. So he's not sitting down with me, showing me how to deal with these things. He's sitting down with other people's kids. He's studying with other people's kids. We had a study of the young people last book, but it was some other person's kid sitting in on it. It's sitting in front of the crowd at the Kingdom Hall. You up on the stage in front of the Kingdom Hall. That's why a lot of elders' kids are wild, because they're putting on a show in front of the congregation. They ain't really teaching their kids. They're what is the word? Neglect. They're neglecting their kids, but they want to look good in front of everybody else and everybody else's kids. So, long story short, that could have turned out pretty bad. Any of us could have gotten hurt. Any of us could have gotten arrested. We were just such bad car thieves that we were never successful in stealing a car. And maybe because we were so bold in broad day, when people saw us get in the car, maybe they thought it was ours. Because who else is dumb enough to just open the door, hop in the car, and sit in it for forever trying to figure out a hot wire? Being
Obviously
sheltered.
you.
Yeah. Being sheltered, me and my friends, being sheltered was not a good thing. We had no basis to know this is not what you do. Our parents weren't going to tell us.
That's a whole other...
We had no basis of what was and what was not normal outside of the Kingdom Hall. So once you're outside of that environment, you're set loose with no restrictions, no boundaries, no idea of how to deal with feelings and emotions. So I have multiple, it wasn't just me, I have multiple examples of me. It didn't go well. I didn't get killed and didn't get put in jail. One of my friends that used to run with us, he did get caught because he stole from a store, and the amount of things he stole added up to a felony. I think what they do is they add up how much you stole. He was raised JW also. So he was buck wild. You know, I'm talking, he just walked into any store and just started grabbing stuff. And I'm like, that's what I mean. There's no concept of anything that makes sense. There's no concept of anything that makes sense and that does a lot of damage. So he got caught. He got in trouble. He had a felony, and then that affected him the rest of his life. We fortunately didn't get caught and didn't get felonies. My younger sister ended up getting pregnant at a younger age than what should have.
Boys were sneaking in.
At a younger age than what should have happened. And fortunately, the person that she got pregnant with, they stayed together. That ain't the case for a lot of people. So our story could have been worse. Marcus could have got locked up. You know what I mean, for being a bad car thief. My sister could have been a single mom, because usually boys jumping in your freaking room through the freaking roof, this is not going to work out. But in her situation, they ended up getting married. I've got other friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses that ended up getting in all kinds of trouble. So, long story short, life is going to happen, and when it happens, a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses don't prepare their kids for it, which is the reason why the shunning is so damaging, because then the kid goes out and they can't handle life. They don't have no support, and they've been sheltered. So they go out, their parents ain't talking to them, their friends are shunning them. They run into hard times, and the cult expects them to come running back.
Which a lot do.
Because the shunning doesn't, or not the shunning, the sheltering had them ill prepared for life. That's the whole concept. So that's why I don't think sheltering is a good thing, because cults do it because it's a bad thing, to keep you from being prepared for life.
Yeah, because
so that
that's
you
part
need
of the
them.
thing. If you in the big picture of things, if you make the world seem it's so hard, and then you go out there because you're ill prepared because you've been sheltered, then of course that is a better chance for them to boomerang back around to the cult, because they feel like, oh, life is hard. I have no support out here.
Yep.
But if I just go back to the Kingdom Hall and get reinstated or whatever,
go back to the bubble.
I'll be accepted.
Go back to that little bubble.
Accepted, and I'll have, let's say it's a single mom. I'll have at least help from the sisters and stuff, and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, it's kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. Cults shelter people not necessarily for the betterment of the person, but so that they're not capable of dealing with life outside of the cult. They feel like they need the cult. Because they're going to go out, do something stupid because they weren't prepared. There was a guy that got beat up in a club. I don't know what he was doing, but it's likely he's probably doing something crazy because he's raised Jehovah's Witness. Goes to a club, gets the crap beat out of him, and then comes right on back to the hall. Like, oh man, it's hard out there. It's hard. Dude, you probably, were out doing something. Like me and a lot of my friends and other family who are all Jehovah's Witnesses, and
I do stupid
were sheltered. Well, you never. I don't know. You had your cousins.
Yeah.
You were around people who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses.
There's some things in your mind, if you're somewhat, with it, that you just know not to do.
I gave multiple examples. Multiple examples. You know what I mean? Because there's people that are in real gangs, and they're not necessarily sheltered. So the difference, I think, is we ended up doing and getting into the same things other kids got into. We just didn't know how to handle it.
Ooh, that's him.
We just didn't know how to handle it. There's other girls that have guys pursuing them and wanting to meet up here or there. But a Jehovah's Witness whose parents all of a sudden are divorced and then the freaking dad is off somewhere and then they're just left alone, they may not have anybody around them to talk sense into them. Okay, you're going to meet up with this guy, I'm going to come with you. Or to be able to come and ask me, well, I want to have this guy over, can you kind of keep an eye out, you know what I mean? Or anything, she don't know to do that.
They don't want to say nothing about this guy.
She don't know to do that. So I think that's what it is. I end up getting involved with stuff that other wayward guys at a young age got involved with. It's just I was surrounded by people. We were all idiots. I was surrounded by people. Nobody had any sense at all. Where's the sense going to come from? I want to ask Miss Serenity and then put the camera on her.
In the case of you mentioned...
Well, you ain't going to let me present the information. I never asked the question.
You said, well, present it.
Yeah, I never asked the question.
Where are you going to get the...
No, okay, so if you are a Jehovah's Witness and you're surrounded by other Jehovah's Witnesses and you go wayward and you're wanting to go rob cars and things like that, where are you getting the knowledge of how to be a criminal or how to not get caught or how to not get killed or any of that?
Number one, from just learning about, because if you're a witness, you know the Bible and you know right and wrong. So obviously, why would you even try and be a thief? Because you shouldn't steal.
Well, that's not answering the question. No,
it's answering the question. You shouldn't.
The Bible says don't do it.
You don't want my answer. That's why you're cutting me off.
No, I'm not cutting you because you're not. So you don't the scenario.
You don't steal cars. You don't break in other people's property. You don't steal stuff from a store.
The scenario is of a person who is doing those things, not the scenario of a person that just don't do it because the Bible says not to do it. Because that's, in general, not what happens with a lot of youth.
Stealing is a big kind of like...
A lot of youth.
Not even with witnesses, but that's just kind of a thing where it's like, okay, we don't do that.
So, in other words, there is no reference point of how to be a criminal.
So, let's say
if a Jehovah's Witness decides, I'm going to go do this, that, or the third. Or if a Jehovah's Witness decides, I'm going to go to this party. They're more sheltered than all the other kids most likely at that party. They're in over their head. Yeah, the Bible says, don't go party. But that's not what people are going to do.
Don't party.
It's going to say something to that effect. But that's not what people are going to do.
But
you ain't supposed to go to the strip club. But there are plenty of Jehovah's Witnesses that once they get in the car, we're all together. Y'all want to go to the strip club? And then everybody's nervous because you're in over your head. You have no reference point.
You have to look at what everyone else is doing. So then, if you're just
you have no.
like, okay.
But that's the whole concept of being sheltered. Is you have no experience in anything. You ain't gonna just figure it out. You're gonna stumble your way through it, but you are further behind than everybody else.
Right.
All the other youth that are out getting killed right now because what they do these days is there's somebody who's in an opposing gang they do not like. They will get on a video, make a music song about that person, and now that person has to do something. And it's an epidemic of youth that keep doing this, and they keep getting killed. And they're all around people their age, most likely, so no one's telling them, you know what ain't the brightest thing in the world? To go and taunt these people that live 2 blocks from you. Eventually, y'all are going to run into each other. So it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just that Jehovah's Witnesses are further behind than other people that have any experience at all. So not having any experience and making sure your kids don't have any experience at all, I don't think is a good thing. Because eventually they're going to end up at the party, but they're not going to know how to handle it. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's just my view of it. Eventually they're going to end up being offered the drugs, just like other kids are offered the drugs, but they're not going to know how to handle it.
Right. But if you're sheltered, you're never going to run into any of that. Because the parents will make sure you're always around other witness kids. And other witness kids will be sheltered and only be around other witness kids. But then you have the ones like me that were just curious about everything. And I didn't do anything, but at the same time, I learned about everything. So I wasn't stupid.
You got experience. Somehow you got experience.
So you go to the library, you look up, other cultures, customs.
Yeah.
I went to public school. So obviously I got taught about drugs. I got taught about sex, but I could also look at other relatives and what happened. I had an aunt that was divorced like 3 times or something. She was disfellowshipped twice, and then she disassociated once.
Don't be putting your aunt out there like that.
I have lots of aunts. And she's not going to watch these videos, trust me.
But
because then she went back. She went back after she disassociated. Yeah. And she's there and she shuns me now. That's the funny part. I used to talk to her when she was disfellowshipped.
Yeah.
And even get in trouble with my parents for talking to her. But now she's holier than thou. So she's like, oh, you're an apostate, Serenity. I can't do nothing. I can't talk to you, whatever. And I'm like, cool.
I got relatives.
3 husbands.
That's my whole thing. My stepdad is on his 3rd. And heck, it could be the 4th or 5th, but eventually a person gets so of an age where they can't just be bouncing around anymore because they're 60, fucking 70 years old.
Well, but yeah, her last husband actually died like a few years ago.
There were other witnesses there was some witness that got into some drugs, and he was never the same. We would see him at the hall just spaced out, and people would tell us, well, he got into some drugs, but what they're not telling us is we didn't prepare him for life at all. And he done messed around and got into something that was completely out there. Other people experiment with drugs, weed and stuff like that. Whatever he got into,
that's true, because if you don't know
mentally,
nothing about
he was never the same.
They can bulk it up. They can lace it with stuff. They can do all types of things, and it doesn't.
So a Jehovah's Witness don't know.
That's what I'm saying. They don't know. A lot of people.
They don't know that they done laced these drugs with something. You know what I mean? It's every situation is a I didn't know situation, and that could be dangerous eventually, because they want you to always be around Jehovah's Witnesses, but life happens. My parents get a divorce. There ain't nobody watching us at all. At all. Like, eventually, my mom's got to work. She's not here. My stepdad don't even live there no more, so he ain't there. So that sort of a situation, in my opinion, is negative. Now, if you have one parent out and one parent in, you're not as sheltered.
Right.
I've got cousins that went to parties their whole lives growing up because their dad was out, but their mom was in.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in a situation where they just have no clue what to do in these situations.
No, that's why I was like,
I remember being in school, and for some reason, everybody else in the school knew not to jump over midgets. I was the only one that did not know. And there was a girl who was a midget that was in my class, and I'm running.
Person?
I don't know, is it bad to say? I was running, a small person. I was running, and I'm darting because I'm trying to hurry up and get to class. And then boom, she's right there. And my Jehovah's Witness ain't, the only thing I know is when it was in the watchtower, I didn't know what to do. So I jumped over her and then kept going. This girl about whooped my tail. I heard her cussing and I heard her little feet running behind me. And I'm thinking, am I getting chased? What's wrong with jumping over people? You know what I mean? It's like you have to have a reference point. You got to have some reference point.
I don't know where you were going with that. Because
that I was the only one that didn't know socially you're not to jump over what you say, small people, little people, I don't know. Comment down below your experiences. If you were sheltered, was this a good thing for you to be sheltered? Because, well, they kept you away from the opposite sex, but eventually you're going to be around them. So then what do you do?
I guess we had two completely different upbringings, but, you know, because there's just stuff if you're out and about in the world. Like, I traveled to different places, obviously, because my family on my mother's side were not in the U.S.
I'm traveling.
So you learn courtesy, customs, just in general of behavior, what you should and should not do.
No, I wasn't traveling.
So just different things gives you common, you know.
And I didn't have none of that. I was in my rooms with watchtowers in my video games. That was it. But yeah, comment. We gotta wrap it up. Comment down below.
And I didn't have video games. That was a no-no.
Let me know what you think. Oh, we had radar movies.
No,
because it's a show for everybody else.
Even
it's
cartoons,
not. It's not
too
in
violent.
the home.
Like they were, you know, the little Looney Tunes. Some stuff. My parents were like, "Oh, that's violent." You shouldn't want to hurt people.
Comment down below. X Walk Kill Bethelite and Serenity's back now. Signing out.